Shalafu, from listener questions to some running gags. Insider stories, ambush light, that dad life and respect for flags. Kick off the weekend, alright? It's the Growler Friday Show, it's Dey Light.
All right, welcome into the latest edition of Dey Light. Paul Dehner Jr., Mark Shalafu here with you on a Friday, the first off-season Friday, Mark, and I feel good about that. I know Bengals fans wish that they were preparing to go to Buffalo or watch this weekend in a big game, but the first off-season Friday for somebody who's been grinding on this thing since July 27th, it's a decent day. A decent day
that you get to spend buried under snow and besieged by the weather.
I am. It's okay though. Snow can't get my spirits down. Anybody in their job that has that busy season of work, like whatever it is, maybe you're a summer busy season person, maybe you're just, I don't know what it is. And then the moment you realize like that part is kind of officially done, there's just a special pop in your step. You just find yourself hopping around, telling a cut. There's no weather that can get me down today.
Even though you got extra dad duties and stuff with snow days, and then you got to do some shoveling. None of that's going to take you down. What flag do you fly on a snow day?
Well, we have the Elsa, let it snow flag. So the Frozen kind of goes front and center. We've been on the Frozen flag since the moment New Year's came down. So we're just celebrating the season right now.
Just locked into Elsa for the foreseeable future until a birthday, or do you have like a President's Day flag that will eclipse it?
I'd love to. I'd love to say that I've got I'm a big Honest Abe guy. I'd love to say that I've got my Lincoln flag that I put up or whatever, but I don't. It's a little bit of a hole in my season. You're right. So if anybody feels like they'd like to get me a good President's Day flag, they know of one, or if you know a Lincoln flag guy, feel free to give me a call. I'm sure if I go up to Flags USA, they could make me one, but I gotta take the initiative on that one. I haven't gotten as inspired by President's Day as I am by others.
You made it through a whole season. You deserve to treat yourself to something special, even if that's the Abe Lincoln flag you've always secretly desired. That's what you deserve at this point. The 12-leg parlay didn't hit, so you don't have to go to Buffalo this weekend. I'm disappointed. We did on this show, we talked about what would be the most heartbreaking way for it to play out. We said that it would end with the Chiefs. At least I said that. I thought it'd be a little bit more dramatic end with the Chiefs than it was, but yeah, our winning ticket didn't end up winning, so we don't get to cash out anything on that.
No, I was telling Mo this earlier this week, and I said it's the only way a 12-team parlay could end, with the last leg that leaves you telling everyone a bad beat story, right?
Yeah.
We hit 11 of the 12 legs, and you're not going to believe what happened with the 12th one, and then you end up hating whoever that team or person is forever, and it's it's just compiling here with the Chiefs, but still it's the ultimate way for a 12-team parlay to miss just by the one bad beat at the end.
Everybody's got those bad beat stories, though. Like you've got those chambered, and sports gambling does make it more interesting. Like those meaningless college games, they're running out the clock, the defense is stopped, then one guy goes in for a clear dunk at the end that just blows you up and costs you hundreds of dollars.
One thing I always enjoyed, did you ever used to watch poker on ESPN at all? I don't know if you were into the poker boom.
No, I had a life, but on. Proceed.
Yeah. It's fair. Well, I would watch some, and they would have there was a guy who would set up at the World Series of Poker a table, and if you just paid him like $5, it said pay $5 and tell me your bad beat story. And so people would just pay to go up and because no one wants to hear it. No one cares about your bad beat story. But there's a profit to be made always in Vegas, and so that was that guy's table setup, and I was like, I love that. That. It's a fantastic idea.
That is terrific.
Let's go. We got to do your favorite story of the week.
Well, I mean, the Bengals aren't going to be playing in the playoffs, but they are going to potentially get to play in something even bigger, and that is the Wal-Mart Bowl. I don't know if you heard about it.
But what happened with the Wal-Mart Bowl? Was that Travis Kelce?
Yeah, so on their podcast, which we used to have beef with, and then the beef was squashed. Maybe it's coming back because, he's talking a lot of smack about the Bengals, and I guess he was referencing whether or not he was scared of them, right? Because that was a little bit of the social media. Oh, the Chiefs are scared of the Bengals. That's why they're laying down to Denver. They're not resting their starters. They're trying to keep the Bengals out. And he said that he wasn't afraid of them at all, wanted the Bengals in, wanted to slay every dragon, which I don't know what sense that makes necessarily. But then he said, I don't care. I would play them even in a Walmart parking lot. Why is that your go-to place to play a football game, a pickup football game in an active Walmart parking lot, just among people that are, trying to get their groceries or get some shopping done? Now you've got to pull the car around these millionaires playing a game of football on the concrete.
I like it. I think that's it. I think it's like the worst version of NFL Blitz. Where just you could play games anywhere. I like that. I think this could be part of like the Pro Bowl games, right? Where you have to actually play, one drive through an active Walmart parking lot or something like that, or like a Target or whatever. I mean, look, we're doing dodgeball. We did tug of war at one point with the Pro Bowl games. There's all this stuff. Why not? One drive through a parking lot. I'm for it.
Yeah, let's get all these millionaires out there and have them playing on a hard surface. You've got some kid restocking the carts that just pushes those right through a pivotal third down. If you think people complain about the refs, I'm going to be complaining against the cart guy that blew up our third down pass play.
The Bengals, yeah.
In this all-important Walmart bowl. That's how much Travis Kelce loves ball, though, man. He'll take on anybody in the Walmart parking lot. I feel like that was like a paid mention, too. All right, yeah, sure, we can play a game in the Home Depot parking lot on the day of their 2-for-1 mulch sale. It had that sort of random product placement for them. Maybe we should do that on this show.
We should do that. Kudos, kudos to the Kelces. They have been very good at finding ways to make a profit on their podcast, and that includes many such drops. And so I don't besmirch them at all for that. Good for them.
Yeah, you know what, though? The Growl Pals challenged the New Heights podcast. Our listeners will play their listeners in the Menards parking lot. We'll do it. Let's set it up.
For the rights to an 11% rebate.
I'm looking forward to Walmart Bowl. That's going to be even bigger than the playoffs. So
love it.
Yep.
My biggest story of the week is on this defensive coordinator search, which is always fun times. But I've got a bunch of information. We'll talk a little bit about it here. But what I always love is you get people who get obsessed with this guy who they literally had no idea who he was or know anything about his coaching styles. Have you heard about the assistant defensive line coach for the Houston Texans? He's a no-brainer. He's got to be the guy, and they're not even going to interview him. What are they doing, right? And it's there's an obsession that happens, how everybody in the defensive line room in Houston absolutely loves this guy and his personality. We don't know. None of us know. The people that are running these searches everywhere don't know 100% what these coaches are. They hope you talk to as many people. It's like any hire, any job does. You think you hope you talk to enough people that vouch for somebody, but especially those of us sitting around just learning a lot of these people's names because you're just not researching who the defensive backs coach for a random team across the conference is. You don't need to know all that. But I love how the arrogance of this is the guy, and if they're not talking to him, they're blowing it is, it's like, oh, come on. Let's just everybody calm down. Interview as many people as you can. Get as much background as you can. Let's not act like it's a slam dunk anywhere. Okay.
I do if you were the assistant defensive backs coach at say Green Bay or Minnesota or something, I think maybe some of this starts with them, right? You get a burner account, you throw some Bengals graphics on it, they'd be fools not to talk to this guy. He is the class of the NFC. He's a head coach in waiting.
Yes.
And he just gets his own little press train going, little hype train working.
I would not be surprised. I mean, the stories you hear, that's not that far away from some of the stuff you hear about how people try to get the hype train going. But I do think it's an interesting search. Okay, I'm here to know all the names. We're learning all the names as we go. We're kind of learning the directions that they do and don't want to go. I talked a little bit about this earlier in the week. I don't know that they're as keen on the biggest names that are out there. I don't think they're looking to bring in one of the former head coach types that, maybe would seem to make sense on the surface. And this is a big job. Like, it's the job in the league right now. It's the one that the most people are interested in. Being the DC opposite of Joe Burrow is a nice little spot, especially when the bar is as low as it is. Really can't get much lower. But I that just doesn't seem to be the method that they're going to employ with this one, in terms of the Robert Salehs, who, he's going for head coaching gigs right now. And the San Francisco DC job being his fallback seems fairly inevitable at this point. Dennis Allen isn't going to be a part of this mix, which made the most sense to me during the year, but it doesn't seem to be one that they want to go down. I think the stress on this, and I mentioned this in the show with Jay earlier this week, is looking for that truly hungry ascending star. Now, you can get in trouble there. You can get cute and you can miss. And sometimes it's best to just go with solid. And they're looking at solid. Patrick Graham, DeMarcus Covington have interviewed this week. Both of those guys are current defensive coordinators, the Raiders with Graham, and the Patriots with Covington. And so they're in that range. They're looking for guys that have been or are currently DCs, but also looking for the star in making. And that could come from the college ranks. That could come from the pro ranks. And I think there's a bunch of names that you'll see pop up next week, specifically with some guys on some playoff teams that would make a bunch of sense, or maybe some guys in. And Al Golden, I think, is one that I've mentioned since the beginning. You saw Notre Dame show up again last night. Again, they're going to play for a national championship. Al was asked this week about the Cincinnati DC job and basically said, it took Notre Dame 30 years to get here. I'm not going to be thinking about anything else now. He was sort of asked if he'd talk to him, and he said, I don't even know my way out of the building right now. So deflection.
I love that.
Right? Deflection.
I do think
there
it was
not
on
a
this
no
show.
In there. There was not I'm not
Right.
interested in there. I'm sure Al is going to be interested, even if just for leverage, to use his name being in this search to his advantage.
But if you were Al Golden, and I do think that we had a Growl pal that brought his name up before most people were even talking about Al Golden. So credit to whoever sent that in a while ago. If you're Al Golden, though, you're making $2 million a year as the Notre Dame defensive coordinator. You have a lot of job security after the season you put together. You're towards the back half of your career. He's not like a young ascending guy. Do you really want to make that jump to the NFL as a defensive coordinator? Like, how much more money would he actually be making?
Well, that's just it. I mean, it would take the Bengals paying up to make it be that. I mean, they would have to pay a lot more money than they're probably comfortable with to do it. But you know, how comfortable was Al here? I mean, that's the thing. When he was here in 20 and 21 as a linebackers coach, did he like the NFL lifestyle? Did he like the rhythm of it? Does he hate recruiting? Does he hate NIL now? Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he thinks it's great. Does he want to be a head coach in college? I just think it's an unknown there, but you do know the fit. You do know the first from a Cincinnati perspective. You know Al Golden. He has clearly shown an ability to get the most out of young players, and that's going to be such a big part of this. And so a comfort with him, his comfort with the organization, if he wanted to inevitably get out of college and that world and get back into the NFL world, you know, he wouldn't be far from potentially being an NFL head coach if he came here and put a great defense together and they won the Super Bowl. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
And so his background would fit. So in that way, I view him as ascending kind of still, because he seems pretty driven and there's aspirations I think that you could see there with him. Do you want to be young to be that? So I just think he's interesting, but I don't know, you know, there's also a lot of questions there. And now another week that they'll go unanswered pretty much, as he's going to go prepared to play in the national, or be a coach for the national championship. So we'll see what happens with that. But I mean, you know, there's A couple of, Jim Leonard from Denver is one that certainly you see who is really, really liked. He took over as an interim head coach in Wisconsin when they fired Paul Chryst, and then Luke Fickell eventually got that job. And Leonard took a year off last year, but he was like a consultant in Illinois. But he goes to Denver and they loved him. They originally, there was a thought there that he could be the DC that's there in case Vance messed up, or maybe was originally being recruited to be the defensive coordinator potentially when they were deciding what they were going to do there when Sean Payton came in. And so they really like him, and he's had a big role in the development of a ton of young players. He's great at developing young players. That's kind of his reputation. And so another guy that would make a ton of sense and feel like the up and coming rising front runner type. But he can't interview. He's not interviewing yet because Denver plays the Bills this weekend. So there's going to be a number of guys like that, I think, that you're going to see pop up on the surface over the next week or so.
Here's my question with this. And there's a lot of times that Zack Taylor kind of falls into the spot of having to answer questions because there is no GM on this team. So whether it's contract stuff or other things, but when he comes out and says that the coaching decisions was his move, how much of that do you think is like 100% true, or him giving cover to the front office? And how much of this search is going to be just on like Zack Taylor? Like, is it his call on this 100%?
Yeah, it's his call. I think this is his thing. I mean, it's kind of his top lieutenant because of how much time he spends on the offensive side of the ball versus the defensive side of the ball. It's the most important person in the building to him, because he gives nobody more control than he does to the DC. So it's his thing. I mean, I think that you're going to have opinions and conversations you're going to have, and he's going to talk to a lot of people in the building, all these candidates. But inevitably, I do think it does end up being his call. And I do think moving on from other coaches is largely his call. But that's a thing that is discussed in the weekly conversations. And can it be influenced? Sure. And I think a lot of these things is they just the biggest thing is they always try to come out with, this is the decision that we all made together and we're moving forward as this is what it is. There might have been reservations towards certain moves, and it could have been, a certain coach or whatever. But I think largely they let Zack Taylor drive the bus on his staff and be the one. If he thinks that's what's best, they kind of try to let him do it. They have opinions, and they're going to, about certain things not being good enough or things that are good that they like. But I think inevitably the staff itself, that's him. That's him making the call there. But plenty of time to go through this. But I think we're kind of getting a good feel now for the type of coordinator that we're going to see. And it might not be, hey, it'll be the name that Twitter Joe 469 has been looking at and knows this is the guy, right?
Some coach's kid.
I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. There's lots of those that will bubble up, and we'll see where it goes from here. Can I rank your tweets real quick?
Sure.
On the week. Okay. A couple. First off, I hope everything gets better with the Facebook account.
Yeah.
You had to ask a sincere question on Twitter, which I know had to pain you to see if anybody could help with a hacked Facebook account. That had to have hurt you.
It did, because it immediately got flooded with spam. I'm like, oh yeah, this is why this platform also sucks. This is not a place to get real help. This is a place that you're going to get swarmed by bots and, bad faith actors. So that was profoundly unhelpful.
It was announced this week that Deshaun Watson suffered a setback during his Achilles recovery, throwing his status into doubt. And your point was the setback Cleveland deciding they don't want him to recover?
It sure feels like that, right?
Sure feels like
mysterious
was this
setback.
Like a Jeff Galooly situation where someone showed up in the alley when he went to go to training and just like hit it with a bat to see what happens?
Or they just told him like, hey, you're still going to get paid. Just pretend like I hit you with this bat and you've had a setback. Stay away, but we're not just going to get rid of you. That whole thing is just so wonky to me, but they should, they got to move on. You can't just keep playing that same, is Deshaun Watson going to be our guy? And what a mess they are.
Send Cordell Volson to the Jermaine Burton slot machine. Always appreciate that from last week. It's been a while since we've sent anybody to the slot machine.
Yeah, and I feel like, he needed that timeout because he just kept getting beat so bad in that game. And it was a tricky watching experience for me because I was in a sports bar in Steelers country. So I had a lot of, after a show, and there were a lot of very vocal people who had just enjoyed me on stage, but did not enjoy my perspective on that game.
Yes. Enjoyed that. And so I also enjoy watching you watch Notre Dame, which is great. Just going through the emotions. What is your history with Notre Dame? Have you just always been a fan?
Yeah, my dad was raised in Chicago in a Notre Dame family. An aunt and uncle went there, so I grew up a huge Notre Dame fan. My first game that I ever got to see in person was Notre Dame Boston College in '93, which is a historic choke, one of the worst games that was ever played in Notre Dame Stadium. They were number 1 in the country, had to beat a terrible Boston College team to essentially win the national championship, and they lost on a field goal. So that was my first experience with Notre Dame in person. Yeah, so it's a miracle like that. That's my clear story about how I'm not a bandwagon fan. If you're there for the absolute lowest point, then you've established some bona fides.
Well,
But
I'm
Mark
enjoying
Stoops,
your
he's the guy.
relationship with quarterback Riley Leonard right now. And
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
the original, I didn't delete any tweets about Riley Leonard. That's crazy you'd even think that. And then you subtweeted that with, I was right about him all along. And then you subtweeted that with, dang, am I going to have to delete this too? And then you subtweeted that with, nah, he stinks. it was just great to watch you continually ride the roller coaster with a final LFG, here come the Irish on the nah he stinks subtweet. So it's fun to watch you just go absolutely up and down and come out sort of, I think, happy, but perhaps vomiting.
It was probably one of the more intense sports viewing experiences of my life. And I've been traveling a lot for stand-up this year. So I wasn't even at like a sports bar or out with buddies last night. I'm watching it at home. In the fourth quarter, I'm putting our 5-year-old to sleep way too late because I've let her stay up because I'm watching the game. And I had started to lose faith after the Riley Leonard interception. So I'm like, trying to get her to sleep, sitting in her bed with all the lights off, still watching on my phone as the greatest comeback ever comes out. And it was just an insane experience to watch it like that without being able to make a single noise, or I'd risk waking up this 5-year-old. But that's what you got to do sometimes. You got to watch games in unique environments, and that was how I had to get through that one.
Love it. Good. So, well, congratulations to your Irish, and we'll see them.
It's been such a weird playoff, though. It's like some of these teams stink, and I'm watching like Notre Dame paid $2 million for Riley Leonard, and the backup looked better in 1 2-minute drill. Penn State's guy threw one of the worst interceptions you'll see. I mean, and some people thought he'd be a first-round draft pick if he came. He's terrible. There's so many bad quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's true. Ohio State tonight. We'll try to see if they can turn it into the Ohio State Notre Dame rivalry national championship game, which would be fun.
I don't know. Ohio State looks pretty good right now.
They look pretty good right now. Before we get into questions, which we have a bunch, thanks to all of you that have been sending them into the Growler Podcast at gmail.com. I do want to take this moment to reach out to people, to the Growl Pals, or people that enjoy the podcast, and maybe you have a local business or whatever, or you're just like, I just want to get the word out about how awesome I am. I'd like to do something. Where the season has ended, but we're starting work now to work with people for free agency draft packages. If you want to be part of our Growl Pal family, of course, future fans, Stan Yo, all of our people that we graders, Cincy shirts, we have so BetMGM, Nation Kitchen. We work with so many people, and we love kind of having stuff here in the community. If you want to do that, you want to partner up with something, you have any ideas, crazy ideas, you just want to say hi, whatever, and talk about stuff, kick around ideas, we're down. We're looking for stuff now for off-season time, or we can talk about stuff for next season. Let us know. I
mean, this is the point, you get to take a breath. You talked about how special this first Friday of the offseason is for you since you've been on it for so long. But we kind of take stock of everything at this point, take a breather and figure out where we go from here, what the next season looks like, who we're working with. And it's one thing for us to start approaching businesses and be like, all right, hey, these people are cool, maybe we'll work with them, but we want to start with the Growl Pals. And Definitely. We had so much success in that whole first year of just working with people that we knew or were part of our community already, people that were listeners of the show that had a business, and it worked out great with some of them. companies like Graders and Cincy Shirts, where there were previous relationships with these big Cincy companies. Well, that's where we want to start, because we've got a great audience. We love our Growl Pals. So if we can keep it in house and keep the show going that way, like that's probably the best way to do it, is to kind of just build off of that momentum.
Yep. And we're here for whatever creative ideas or solutions you want. You want to talk about a show, you want to do a segment that we can create for you, anything like that, or with just an opportunity for us to come in and see whatever your place of business is, or try out your product and talk about whatever it is. We're here for you, whatever it is. You let us know. We're here to work with you. So if you have interest, thegrowlerpodcast@gmail.com. Send your business inquiries, and we would love to partner up with Growl Pals, because we think it's just a great way for us to kind of keep our arms wrapped around our family, so to speak. We like.
I mean, yeah, if you're a podcast listener, you're hearing the same companies advertised on every podcast. Do we really need another Blue Chew commercial or live read that we're gonna have to, like?
I mean, look,
let's work with the.
If Blue Chew wants to, I mean, look, it's if Blue Chew wants to show up with a check, I mean,
yeah, you'll take their money.
No.
You'll take their check, sure. But before we take their check, we would rather work with some Growl Pals.
100%.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right. Speaking of the Growl Pals, they have many questions as the season has ended. Let's get into it.
Some good ones too. So keep sending those questions to thegrowlerpodcast@gmail.com. We're going to start with Daniel. He sent us a lot of praise about the show, which is a great way to start your emails. But he wants to know if it's not too early to start thinking about the draft, even before extensions and free agency and all that. He's curious if you view the Bengals as currently being in position of drafting for need, or if they're going to continue to lean towards drafting the best player available. With positional needs across almost the entire offense and defense, I don't agree with that. But definitely, there's parts of that offense for sure. He says, especially if the team clears cap space, do you see any of the following positional groups as most likely to have 2 picks within the first 3 rounds? Offensive line, defensive line, or defensive backs?
Yeah. So I can RPP this pretty good. The most likely would be the defensive line. I expect to see a bunch of assets thrown at the defensive line right now. Offensive line, they need new guards. They're going to have new guards. It's just going to be a matter of how they approach it. So they'll be interested in free agency with the guard position. They'll be interested in premium picks with the guard position. So I would expect those to be one, but I wouldn't expect 2 draft picks to come on the offensive. I mean, you never know.
You only have 6 picks.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. And I mean, in terms of your top 3 rounds, and they could acquire more picks somehow if they wanted to, but whatever. That's another conversation. I think this is clearly D-line, offensive line, and then defensive backs will be last. I think they really Charlie and I talked about this yesterday. They really like the setup of the young defensive backs that they have. I think the idea of bringing in somebody who can help develop young players, who can keep it simple for them. I think you saw the success they could have if they just kept it simple for those young guys over the last 5 weeks. Cam Taylor Britt played a lot better. He got out of his head, played with confidence. Same with, you saw DJ Turner starting to come along, even Josh Newton making plays. You'll have Dax Hill back next year, who seemed much more confident in himself with a position that he was kind of given full reign over. I think the idea of taking those guys, giving them to a new defensive coordinator who's built to develop them, adding again one pick or one veteran free agent makes sense there. But I don't see throwing bodies at the defensive back room. That's not the impression that I get is coming. I think defensive line is where you're going to see the majority of, if you're talking about multiple early picks, that's where it would go.
What about, you brought up Dax Hill, who we haven't talked about. Do you think that he's going to be the next slot corner, or do they think they bring back Mike Hilton? Or I don't know if you should spend a lot of money on a Mike Hilton replacement.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting philosophical question that they're going to kind of go through. I think Mike Hilton is a playmaker. He made plays. They didn't have many guys making plays, and there's a real argument to be made for bringing Mike Hilton back. But are you going to just clear the decks to let these young guys take ownership and grow into roles? You can't do that. Like, you can't ask the young guys to grow into roles and become this thing together when you still have an older veteran placeholder. It's hard to do. They don't want to be leaders. They feel like, oh, it's Mike's room. I don't want to take ownership of that. And that's really hard because you love Mike and he is a good leader, but are you going young or not? Are you going to go with young, energetic, and let these guys grow into leadership roles? Because none of them in the corner room are going to, as long as Mike Hilton is there, and because he's such a leader and there's so much respect there for him. Sometimes you have to cut that guy out to let the young guys truly blossom, and I think that's the philosophical discussion there of whether that's a good thing to do or not. I think my money would be on Mike not being back. And that Dax Hill would kind of become the slot corner potentially, or Josh Newton even giving opportunity to go into that role. They've got a number of guys that could play in there. So I think there's a pretty good possibility. I think that's the direction they go, but it also depends on what Mike's market is and where he lands. So it's discussions they haven't fully had yet, but I think that's where I think it lands with them going young.
Our next question is from Sarah. She says, hi, Paul and the Growler team. She says that the podcasts are like her morning coffee, essential and invigorating. That's high praise right there.
Cheers.
She says, if I want to have meaningful conversations about the Bengals, you guys are my go-to. But I have a burning question that's been keeping me up at night. Where the heck is Evan McPherson? Did he ride off into the sunset, never to be seen again? Seriously, he doesn't come up in conversations anymore. You guys don't ask Zach about him during press conferences. What is the deal with Evan? Do you join a secret kicker society or something? She wants answers. Is he part of the future?
Yeah, he's part of the future. I mean, they just signed him to an extension.
Right? Like
he was hurt. So yeah, when you're hurt, you're kind of out of sight, out of mind. They knew he wasn't coming back. He was on IR. When you're on IR, we know the timetable that he's not going to be back. We did ask about Evan leading into that last week when he could have come off, and they basically said no, like he isn't quite there with what his injury was. I think they weren't going to take any chances of any re-aggravation or issue there late in the season, so they went with Cade York. Obviously, he's fine. Darren Simmons did have some interesting things to say about Evan late in the season when we were talking about it. It seemed he has interest in Evan, changing a little bit of his offseason routine in terms of, whether it's strength or flexibility or whatever, to try to avoid some of the injury tweaks that he's had over time. So I think there's going to be some discussion about that to get more out of Evan and ways that he can find more consistency. Obviously, there's concern over what was happening with him late in the year. I don't know that it rises to the level. I mean, they'll bring in competition because there's kickers available that will be undrafted free agents, but I don't think it rises to the level of got to push Evan right now with bringing in, like drafting another kicker or anything like that. But it's noted. I think it's noted that the struggles that he had at the end of this year, but they know who he is, and kicking can be volatile year to year. So I think there's plenty of comfort with him. He's fine. I think they just want him to kind of maybe slightly reconfigure some of his offseason routine to be a little, more conducive to staying healthy through the season.
Fewer concerts, more training, Evan.
There you go.
That's in my mind. Yeah, he's still at concerts every single week. Our next one's from Bruce. He said the Bengals have a new passing game coordinator this season. And how much did that affect the great years from Burrow and Chase? Because he never hears much about him.
Yeah, we don't really hear much about him. I know I've talked. His name has come up without me asking about it a couple of times, since towards the end of the season here, and they love him. They thought that he had a really big impact on some of the new concepts that they brought in, and some of the ways they were able to create explosive plays specifically for Chase. Out of the mold of what they did for Justin Jefferson, something that if you listen to this podcast, we were telling you about way back in the summer was going to be a big part of what they were going to try to do there. And it proved true. And he was a big part of that. I think also, he was a good bridge for Burrow, losing Dan Pitcher, who had been his quarterback's coach his entire career, bringing in somebody who's, and Brad Cragthorpe has a very bright future, I think, certainly as a quarterback's coach, but it was his first year in that job. Having another person who can help kind of be a bridge, help pitch in his first year in that job, help Cragthorpe in his first year in that job, kind of combination of the two. And everybody around Justin has had great things to say about what he brought to the table. And I think he has a bright future, and they're really thrilled that they have him. So a lot of the new stuff you've seen, Justin played a role in, and yeah, he deserves credit. He doesn't get a ton of it because he's in that kind of no man's land between quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator, but certainly did a great job this year. And hard not to be thrilled with anything you saw from the passing game.
I guess you could say the same for Dan Pitcher and just how the offense looked in his first year as a coordinator. It gets overshadowed because of the way the season ended and they didn't make the playoffs and the defense was so bad. But yeah, those are some rising stars for sure.
I want to make sure, you mentioned Pitcher and it's important. I think there was thoughts that maybe he could get some head coaching interviews this cycle. We haven't seen his name in there, which has been kind of surprising when you consider some of the other names that are in there.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think I've said this for a long time since he was a quarterback coach, and you'll hear this anywhere you go in the building. Dan Pitcher's going to be a head coach. Everybody knows it. He's going to be a head coach in this league. He's too good. He's too smart. His background's, he's too well-rounded. He has the it type thing as a leader. And so that's going to happen. I'm a little surprised that he hasn't gotten in the interview circuit this year. I think it's just a matter of time because he's very similar to a lot of these same names that you're seeing out there. He just hasn't maybe been an OC as long. And then when your team doesn't make the playoffs, your name is a little bit out of the mix. Maybe he'll get an interview here as teams dive a little bit deeper into some of the available names. But it seems like through the early going that just the 1 year thing and 9-8 and all the stuff that went down this year kind of pushed Pitcher's name a little bit out of the cycle that you would have thought maybe he would have been in. But they're one playoff run away. And after if he's been a coordinator for 2 years and they make a playoff run next year and the offense looks anything like it does this year, which I would fully expect, he will be one of the hottest candidates. He can be in that Ben Johnson type of mold where where everyone's talking about him.
I'd be thrilled for that to happen. I lose him next season after a Super Bowl, and they're going to need him if they're going to start the season fast for once. But we'll see where he shakes out in these conversations. Our next question is back on the defensive side of the ball. This one's from Ryan, and he's been a long-time Growl pal, so glad we were able to get one from him. He says he loves the pod, and he only made one live show, so he's got some progress that he needs to make there for next season. But his question is not specifically about who the new DC will be, but about possible scheme instead. He said, as long as I can remember, we've always been a 4-3 team, but I've always felt that maybe the 3-4 defense is a little bit better overall. I'm sure that's just not true. And I also know the teams don't use base D as much anyway. But what are the thoughts on a defensive coordinator coming in and completely changing the scheme? Is that even possible? Would we need too many new guys?
You're going to have a different scheme. I mean, you're going to have different concepts and stuff. Defense is defense in a lot of ways where, you might think, oh, they're in a 4-3 or this is a type of player. Yeah, true. And Lou certainly had size requirements of those edge players that we noted that you could pick out the draft picks that they're going to want just by looking at height, weight, and production. And it was like, you got to be between 6'3" and 6'5" and between 262 and 274. And you can play edge for Lou Anarumo. If you're outside of that, they don't want you. They don't invest in you. They never did. That can change. You can get some smaller guys, maybe that they'd be more willing to bring some of those speed rushers off the edge. But he was out there playing a 5-2. He called it a 3-4, call it a 4, call it whatever you want. He was playing, 5 D linemen across with those outside guys being kind of like outside linebacker edge rushers a bunch in base. And so, I think the biggest change you could see is someone who comes in and says, I'm open to these tweener speed edge rushers, which they really haven't been under Anarumo, and that's kind of been part of his thing. But he's been very multiple. Everybody's really versatile. They've done different things. I think the scheme would be more in. It's hard to say. I mean, it's hard to say how it would change. It depends on who the guy is, but you can certainly come in with something a little bit more simplistic. Maybe you say, look, there's a bunch of man corners here. We shouldn't be playing a bunch of zone. Let's play more man and focus on that. I think a good coordinator comes in and the one thing you can't do is say, this is my scheme. Let's make these guys fit in it. It's a good coordinator comes in and says, these are the guys. This is what they do well. How can we build the scheme around those strengths? That's going to be the key, and that's what they're going to be looking for. And so, it could change things. but also they're going to mostly be basing it around what the personnel. You would like to think that would be the case.
Our next question is from Charlie. He says, "Hey guys, loved the show last week. Dey Light may have peaked on that episode." He said, "My question is this: now that all AFC North coaches have been shown in their element for weeks on Hard Knocks, where does Zack Taylor rank? What do you think he does as well or better than the rest?"
I mean, we're ranking Hard Knocks personas. I don't know. Like,
that editing room has a lot to do with it, though.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been the Mike Tomlin showcase for the most part, and he deserves it. I mean, he is a guy that has been one of the best coaches in this league for a long time. But in that same respect, who has more playoff victories in the last decade? Right, Zack Taylor does. And does he deserve any of that credit? I'm sure you're sitting here listening, and you have your opinion on that. But Tomlin's teams have. He looks great, and he is a leader, and he's everything you want in a head coach. Like, he is the ultimate culture setter, and it shows there the way he connects with people, his style. I mean, he's the star of the show for a reason. But then you have teams that continually fall off at the end of the season. Like, this has been consistent, and he plays a big role in the acquisition of all of their personnel, and he hasn't had a good quarterback since Ben left. And so, you at a certain point, you've got to understand the importance of that, and that you can't, in today's game, just live off defense and running the ball. And that's cost them. And so I don't know. Like, I just think it's teach their own. I think each program you eventually mold around the personality of your head coach, and that shows up in the types of guys you have, the types of environment that it's in, and the way that they play on Sundays. And that's why I think you're judged by how you play on Sundays. And I think John Harbaugh is one of the most under-discussed great coaches in this league, has been for a long time now. His ability to run different systems, have different people underneath them, play to his personnel, but also have very much an identity. I mean, they've always been defense and hard-nosed and not afraid to run it and all that stuff. But then be like, yeah, but bring in Todd Monken and open it up and let Lamar throw all over the place. We can win that way too. And and he's got a Super Bowl, and they're consistently good, and they're good late in seasons. And I think Harbaugh is the star. One of the stars of this league that doesn't get talked about enough. But the thing about Zack Taylor, I think, that has come across in this show, and I don't, is his personality is relatability. He relates to everybody. He connects with, you see him. He's very conversational and connected to all of these different people, whether it's from the top, when he's in conversations with other coaches or whoever, or down to the players, and just that, one of us here for you, cares about you, genuinely cares about your well-being. I think that has come across, and that's sort of his style. That's him. He said that many times. That's me. I can only be who I can be. And I think that's who he is. And so he's coaches that way. And I think that's come across on the show. I think all of these coaches have had them in their personalities come across, and it's come across as, this is who I am, and I have confidence in that. I think all of them have had that. It's harder for Kevin Stefanski to show it because they stink. But I think this guy was coach of the year last year. You've ever given him a semblance of a decent quarterback, and he's been a great head coach. And you see that, I think, in him being confident in his own personality and way of doing things too. Everybody's different. Everybody has their own style. You try to find a team and a style that mesh well together. So I don't like ranking. And I don't like ranking them against each other. I don't know if that's really fair to anybody.
Some good coaches in this division, but I do think too, like, the Bengals fans would probably have some strong opinions about how to rank them. But you brought up a good point with Zack Taylor's playoff wins. Like, that counts for something. He's got a lot of them, and these other guys don't have as many. That does matter.
Who was in the Super Bowl most recently? I mean, who was in the AFC Championship? I mean, you get teams that make plays in January, that win games in January, and your profile changes dramatically very quickly.
This next question is from Brendan. He says, "Can you please help me or tell me that I'm flat wrong here?" Yeah, we can definitely do one of those too for you. He says, "What is with the narrative that the Bengals can't afford to operate like a legit franchise? People keep parroting that they're a family-owned business and they didn't buy their way in like people do today. And while that's true, it's also true for the Chiefs, Raiders, Steelers, and maybe others. I mean, Forbes has Mike Brown listed as the 338th richest person in the country, and people talk like he can't even afford his own graders. He goes on about the rich people, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of a long email here. But he says that I know they don't have 100 million sitting in a checking account. That's not how things work with wealth, but there's no reason they couldn't put that kind of money in escrow anytime they want and damn near instantly. So he wants to know why that narrative is still getting pushed out there.
I mean, I think that, the Bengals are responsible partially for pushing that narrative out there. I mean, they talk about being a small market team and having to operate differently, and there's some truth to that. I mean, you do look, Mike Brown and Arthur Blank aren't operating in the same place, okay? And you can say that, or Shad Khan or Stan Kroenke, who owns like 4 teams, or these people that come in and they have made billions of dollars outside, and they do have that money just sitting around. There is a difference, but there's also, they have money and they have ways to access money, and the league cuts them huge checks. And so the idea, crying poor, I don't really buy necessarily. They are different than, some of these just endless strings of cash owners that are in the NFL that have shown up and taken over the league in many respects. But there's, it's set up to be competitive. It's not a non-competitive thing. They can do anything that they really want to do. It's well within their control. I agree with you that it's kind of a false narrative. They are different, but it's not like something that they can't operate. I mean, there's so much money around. I don't really buy that. You can always find ways to access that and hang with whoever you want to hang with.
Yeah, it's always felt like they're just more slow to change, and they're
the rest
stuck
of the,
in their ways.
31 other teams are doing all the things that they need to do in terms of contract structures and whatever. So I don't think that that's really part of it.
That they can't afford to operate. Yeah. This next email, it's not quite rising to the level of an ambush email, but it is a little bit different. So this one's from TJ. He loves the show. Thanks all of us for all the hard work, and appreciates being a growl pal. And he says that it's much better than the insane takes you get in the family group chat or on Reddit. Maybe stay off Reddit. That would be my advice, probably. He said he's saddened he couldn't put off these important offseason discussions with a playoff run, but it's time to get to the big stuff. He listened to Mo hate on the orange pants, and he's got some very strong opinions on jersey combos. He said that it should just be simple like this: home games, all orange; away games, all black; every single flex or special combo, white tiger. He doesn't like the league-wide pattern of light pants with a dark jersey or vice versa, especially when similar color scheme teams play. One's got white pants with a blue jersey. The other's got blue pants and a white jersey. Both teams have blue socks. He can't handle that. He can't handle all the different colors. One color for each team. How do you feel about that? That is his big take.
Well, I will say I do like the white tiger, all white. I hear some of it, but you know what? You know who loves contrast maybe more than anyone? Joe Burrow. He basically kind of picks the uniform combos.
I did not know that.
His opinion, he has say, and kind of, obviously he's very fashion forward. I'm not saying there's going to be backless jerseys in the near future, but but he's very aware and likes his certain ways, and he's a big contrast guy. And so he would be the one that would stand up and say, "Listen, TJ, first of all, thanks for being a growl pal. I also listen and love the podcast, but I'm a big contrast guy, and I need contrast in my uniforms, and I'm fully comfortable with telling you that. Thank you for your opinion, but it's not happening in Cincinnati." And that would be the end of that, as most things go when Burrow has a strong opinion on things. Just so you know.
And that's important when you've got like a franchise quarterback, one of the greatest to ever play the position. You've got to give him what he needs. Maybe you don't give him his star receiver that he asks for, but yeah, you can give him some uniform combos. He can pick
Maybe
those
that's
out.
the switch. That's the switch. They're like, "Look, Joe, we're going to fully put you in charge of all uniform combos in exchange for letting T. Higgins walk," right? But how do you feel about that? Does that ease the pain?
I know you wanted T. Higgins, but how would you feel about getting to pick out the pants for next season? All you, huh? That's something. How about some pants?
Love it. Love it.
Keep sending your questions to the Growler Podcast at gmail.com. Growl Pals came hard this week. Some good questions. And now that we are in off-season mode, we're definitely back to taking some of the crazier ambush questions that you guys have had for Paul. I know we got very, game situated and very game oriented during the last part of the season here, but feel free to take whatever shots or opinions you want from him.
And I think it's important to point something out here. You can put ambush Mark on there too. Okay? I don't know why the ambush section has been strictly focused on me. Yeah. I feel like, look, we both see the Growler Podcast in the inbox. All right, in your subject header, put ambush and a name who's getting ambushed. Okay, if you want to ambush Mark, put ambush Mark. You want to ambush me, put ambush Paul. That's fine. I'm fine with that. But let's not think it's just focused on me. Like I'm the one that constantly has to take these hits. Okay, let's ambush Mark some. I'm here for that. So if you're listening right now, please, it's time to take him on. I shouldn't always be the one that has to talk about foreign relations or the value of garbage men or God knows what else you guys have asked over the course of time.
You know what, though? I think two of my favorites was the guy that just basically wanted you to list things you disliked about your wife, just blasting her on the show. And then I think the original flag guy was an ambush question, too.
That's true.
Because he was asking about your 40 time doing the flag, and that's how we uncovered your whole flag obsession. So it has worked out for us.
It's true. It has worked out, and I want to know more of these deep, dark secrets about Mark. So let's go ahead and fire those off to him. All right, what else we got next? What do you got going? Where are you at next?
All right, so I'm off this weekend, which is nice because I've not had very many of those over the last 3-4 months.
You and I in the same good mood today.
Yeah, exactly. I'm kind of I'm disliking the snow a little bit more than you. I would like the kids out of the house today, but what are you gonna do? But I've got two big shows to mention for any Growl Pals that are in this region. I'll be at the Comedy Attic in Bloomington, Indiana, which is one of the great clubs in the country, on February 13th. Great Valentine's Day show there. And then February 15th, I'll be in the Cincinnati tri-state area at Commonwealth Sanctuary, just across the river in Dayton, Kentucky. Great new club. And another great Valentine's Day weekend thing. So put those on your radar. Those will be big shows. Come out to those. And then I'm coming to North Carolina in March and Wisconsin at the end of this month. And so if you live in any of those places, go ahead and reach out.
Are you guys still doing Joke Gym?
We are. It got canceled because of the snow. But yeah, we've got Joke Gym at Commonwealth, which is the first Tuesday, I think, of every month. And that's a fun show because you see established guys like myself, Josh Sneed, a couple of the other most experienced guys, best joke writers in the city. And we help newer comics punch up their material. You see our new stuff. It's a fun show.
Yeah, I want to come down to one of those and check them out. So I got to make sure we can make our way down there. Maybe some Growl Pals and show up and have some fun. Dad Life, what do you got for Dad Life?
Well, it's snowing again. It will be here soon. And we got the 10, 11 inches, whatever it was earlier. And that was basically, so I'm in the new house. This is the first big shovel session for me with the new driveway. See how the rest of the neighborhood's keeping up on their, shoveling situation. And I got out there early. I was just moving it. I live next to a couple older guys, and one of them cuts his grass every single day. He's just watering the lawn every single day. He's just on top of everything. And he was out there as the snow was falling with his shovel and stuff. I was blown away at that. But I got out there earlier than most and was, slogging away on it, trying to do my thing. Then the old guy that lives kind of behind me has one of those really long driveways, right? So his house is just kind of set back a little bit. He comes through with the snowblower and just totally takes his thing out and then doesn't even say anything to me, just starts hitting the bottom of my driveway too for me, which is it's a lovely gesture and I'm appreciative of that. But that's a little emasculating too when you just see a guy struggling, shoveling off this 11 inches of snow and you're like, oh, this poor guy needs it. He needs me to step in unannounced with the snowblower and just really kind of elevate his pathetic shovel game here.
Yeah. I like the idea of is that neighborly or is that putting someone in their place? Is that making sure that you are inferior to me when it comes to the shoveling snow dispersal game?
Definitely a power move, and I respect it. I respect it for sure. But yeah,
hey, if he wants to come to my neighborhood, I would happily be emasculated if he wants to come and snow blow all my driveway and sidewalk.
Just get emasculated on a regular basis, sir. Just bring it on over.
I don't need it.
Oh,
I don't need
you're
it.
the man.
I'm okay with it. I just don't want to have to go do that again. I have one. I don't know what's happening with Cincinnati Public Schools.
Ooh, okay. Let's get into it.
So first of all, everyone's supposed to come back on Monday, obviously from a long break. So parents are ready for that. Everybody's excited about that. I get it. No one's expecting to go to school when the largest single day of snowfall happens. I still don't know how I even made it down to the stadium, other than I really enjoyed myself adult sledding down the highway. But it was great. And I get it. There's more the next day. And then Wednesday comes and school was also canceled, but not because of snow, because of cold. Okay. And it's specified because of cold. And we've seen this. We had a day in December that was because of cold, and it was like in the 20s. Okay. And I'm not here to be like, back in my day, we went to school. I'm not here to do that. Okay. I'm just saying that's fine. If that's the case, I was concerned at that point. So is that the number? Does that mean anytime it's under 20 whatever degrees that it's going to be school is not happening deal? I mean, what is that about? And then Thursday, the temperature drops to truly concerning levels, and it's all right, back to school we go. No school off at all. It's in fact much colder than it was the day before. And now everybody has to go to school. And on top of that, I get a text and a call and an email, because that's the only way that they communicate, all three at once, blasting you, that says, make sure your kid is at the bus stop 10 minutes early today.
What? 10 minutes?
Now, first of all, we don't even do the bus, so it doesn't really affect me. But I was personally offended, because it's like, wait, you're now making everybody go out there when it's actually concerningly cold, and then being like, oh, make sure you're out there 10 minutes longer too while you're out there. And it's like, look, can the bus just operate at its normal time, right?
Yeah.
Or why are you doing that? But this is mostly about, don't we have to just set a temperature number? Like, don't you just have to say, if you're going to be a place that calls school off for cold, that there has to be a number? Okay,
yeah, that's
10,
crazy.
12, 14 is the high. Wind chills, I don't care. Let's all get together and settle on it. But the willy-nilly, one day it's 22 and the other day it's 5, and then you go that day and you don't go that day, and now we're wasting all these days and nobody knows what's going on or how to predict it, is insane. So that's my message to CPS. Figure it out.
How do they pick that? Like right now, what's the process? That's what I don't know. There's not enough transparency. Is it just one guy that gets to decide if it's too cold, and he's like watching a Sopranos marathon on HBO, and is like, oh crap, I lost what time it was. It's cold tomorrow. Everyone just stay home. And then the next day he goes to bed on time, so you have to go to school even though it's 4 degrees out and you were home when it was 20, but the guy just got his crap together, his life together, and was, awake the next day. I mean, who's out there deciding this? Is this a committee that says it's cold or too cold? I don't understand.
I assume it is just one guy who walked outside without his jacket, didn't realize he didn't have his jacket on, and was like, too cold, call off school. and then goes back inside. I have no idea the process,
like a groundhog,
other than it needs certainly some change. I like good friends of the program, Randy Rico. Okay. Can we just put her in charge of like, look, the temperature tomorrow is going to be below the number that you have specified. You should cancel school if you're serious about things, if you're serious about consistency. If you're not, then keep with your willy-nilly. No one knows when they're going to school or not.
Yeah, Loveland doesn't even have cold days, so I'm still kind of baffled by the whole concept. I do like your idea that one guy just stepping outside though, and like, too cold, goes back inside.
Too cold, not just doing it.
Raises the day off flag at his house, and that's how all the other schools know that, all right, we're done for the day. It's not happening.
It reminds me of this is a a tangential story, but back in the day, when I covered independent baseball in the most rinky-dink league ever early in my career was in Southwest Georgia, and the manager was Wally Backman. I've probably told some Wally Backman stories on here before. I've tell them everywhere. So he's the character of all characters. But the bottom line is, he was basically in his mind running this rinky-dink league because it was in its first year, and there was a lot of rain one day, and he shows up and he is, let's just say, struggling from the night before. Okay. And we go down it's time for the before pre-game media session. And someone comes in and is like, Wally, are we going to play? We're not going to play. What do you think? And he's like, oh, hold on. He's literally in a robe. Okay. He's in a robe and slippers. And he walks out to the dugout, stands on the steps, rips a heater, bang it, goes out, and then went back inside. And I was like, okay, guess we're not playing. Guess that's the official decision. That's how I envision CPS being run at this point. Is just like Wally Backman in a robe, taking a rip off of a nail and deciding too cold. You know, it's like I think that's where we're at.
I'd respect that process much more.
Absolutely. And we could start TV cameras could start showing up at this guy's house. It's like the groundhog on Groundhog Day. Like everyone shows up. Like, is he going to come out in his robe today? Is he going to say one more day of off school?
He's running back into his house. We get to sleep in. All right.
People bring space heaters out right in front of him to make him feel warmer when he steps outside. So maybe convince him to keep school in session. I think there's a lot of possibilities here. I love it.
Hopefully,
all right, that'll wrap us up. No game this weekend, Mark.
I know. Sad.
No game, no walkout presented by Cincy Shirts. Still plenty of great shirts at Cincy Shirts you can go get. Still have our promo code GrowlerPod if you want to go use it. But no game. Playoffs are here. Who do you like to win the Super Bowl? Do you have a Super Bowl pick?
I'm gonna jump on the Lions bandwagon, I guess, because they're fun. I know some people from Detroit. I don't know. I need a good AFC team to root for. I can't make sense of it because on one hand it's like you don't want the Chiefs and their same old story to run it back, but on the other hand I don't want the Ravens to go to a Super Bowl because then they're the team in the North that's gone to it first, most recently instead of us. The Bills have always felt fraudulent in the postseason. I don't really want to get on that bandwagon, but then they do dethrone the Chiefs, so I'm just pulling for the NFC at this point.
That's fair. I think it's the Ravens to lose. I legitimately think the role that they're on, their defense is playing so much better. Their defense has done what the Bengals wanted their defense to do when both of these teams were kind of in the same spot midseason, playing those two games against each other.
Yep.
And their offense is just fantastic. I mean, I think the postseason failures of Lamar are really interesting here because it's sort of the one thing hanging over him that he hasn't accomplished. I mean, he might win his third MVP this year. He's deserving of it. And yet he has this black cloud over his postseason performances. And I feel like they're better figuring out how to deal with that. And if they just can get out there, just play their own game, I think they're the best team in football right now in terms of the way they're playing right now, the combination of offense and defense.
Yeah.
Harbaugh being a great coach. I love the Ravens right now. I'm all in. I'm all in on the Ravens. And the Steelers are probably, they would seem to be an easy matchup, but playing these divisional games, you throw so much because of the familiarity, you throw so much out the window. I still think they get through Pittsburgh. It might be a little more of a struggle than you'd like to see. But I like them against the Bills. I like them against the Chiefs. I think that I think they're in a really good place. It's a tough path, but I just love the way the Ravens are playing right now.
If there's one thing that I know about your Super Bowl picks, it's that they always pan out.
This is good. This feels
good for the Ravens.
The Jets pick doesn't need to catch a stray. A lot of people messed up on the Jets. Okay, a lot of people did.
Very
I was
popular.
trying to zig when everyone was zagging. I was trying to stand out. I'll never stand out again.
Thank you for cursing the Ravens with your prediction.
I'm here for it. All right. Everybody enjoy the games all weekend. Stay safe out there. Stay warm. And we will talk to you next week. Have a good one.